back. Another episode of the podcast. This one's a little bit weirder. You're going to hear more from me, which I sort of fear. But I'm back in here with Nick, who listeners from the Halloween special will remember. Hello, Nick.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be here talking with Peter about his job.
Yes.
Yeah.
My special job. Because I've been working here for about a year, but my position is a year to 2 years. So as of the end of May, my job will be open.
Oh, no.
That's as scary for you as it is for me.
So I brought we
Yes.
prepared some questions for Peter.
Yes.
So the format of this is we're going to just
Do
ask away. And
Ask me
Peter's going to
questions.
tell us everything about his job.
I have to
and
talk a lot.
hopefully one of you guys might find it interesting. So,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, so the first question we have is, what attracted you, Peter, to the position of Assistant Education Curator for Academic and Community Programs?
What attracted you, Peter? I had the same anxiety that, I think that every senior feels at the end of senior year when they don't have a job yet, which is like, oh my God, I don't have a job. I'm about to graduate. The world's about to end. My parents will never forgive me. Everything's about to burn down, which is not true. But I was looking for jobs in museums and related to museums. And it kind of seemed like I wasn't going to be able to necessarily find one right away. I thought I was going to have to do an internship, possibly the old dreaded unpaid internship.
Oof.
Which, I didn't want to do that because I wanted to make some money if I was going to be working. And I heard about this position through my then girlfriend, now fiance's education class. They visited the museum and they were told about this. And it kind of checked a lot of the boxes for me. It had dipping into a lot of different parts of work within a museum. They were looking for a Bates graduate who was supposed to have some background in museums, some in education, which kind of lined up well with what I've done. And so, it just seemed like a good fit. And so I applied, and for some reason they were tricked. They liked me.
Wow.
They didn't realize how foolish and ghoulish I am. And so here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. The next question is, what type of about to graduate Bates student do you think the position is ideally suited for? Yeah.
So it's really a lot of different students, because just to explain about myself, I do not have a background in art history. I mean, I took some art history classes, and I worked as a tutor for the writing center. So I had some general background in education and art, but my degree was in classical and medieval studies. My minor was in music. I was not somebody who you would think of on paper as being like, oh yeah, this person should be an education curator for a museum. So I would say keep yourself open. The nice thing about museums is that when you're working with art, this is the same quote from when Randy Williams was here, which some of you might remember, that art is not about art. It's always about what kind of story it's telling. There's always something to pull out of it, and it can connect to basically anything that you can think of that you could be interested in. So yes, art history students, education students, people working in the arts, obviously the appeal there is, I think, going to be stronger, but I would really encourage anybody with sufficient interest in public engagement in some way, in telling stories and doing anything like that. I think that this could work for you too.
So I think this was already touched upon in what you just said, but can you name some of your museum experiences before working?
So I started, the first experience I had with a museum made me think about it was after my freshman year. I was in an archaeological field school with the Strawberry Bank Museum, which is down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. At the time, I was thinking about doing archaeology. That's why I took it. And the part that I was dreading about the whole thing was that we were supposed to talk to the public. And I was like, oh no, that's going to give me a heart attack, because pretty introverted in daily life. And so I thought that was going to be really stressful. And I thought that digging around the dirt would be fun, but that the other parts would be not as fun.
And now we're talking to the public right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the exact opposite was true. I loved talking to people about what we were working on. And it kind of opened up this idea of oh, okay, if there's some kind of structure to it, this can be really enjoyable. It's not like talking to people at a cocktail party where I'm just looking for every exit as quickly as possible.
So when you entered here at
Yeah.
Bates, did you feel anxious about maybe lacking a
Yeah.
super in-depth background in art?
I did. I definitely felt anxious about it because like the only art history classes I took were medieval or ancient art. So I had taken classes on Greek art, and I kind of knew a lot more about medieval art, specifically medieval European art, that is, which I took because of the interest I had in the surrounding cultures that were a part of that. It was less about the art itself, although that was starting to emerge there. But, to touch back on that same quotation about how art is not about art, I really think that anybody can engage with and learn about art given the proper context. I've definitely, part of the position was developing that skill. Like, it wasn't like I was supposed to come in day one and be able to write a very elaborate visual analysis paper. It was like, I came in, it was like, here's how we approach learning about art. And Anthony was able to sort of demonstrate that. And I've been able to do it with some other classes. And so yeah, I was anxious about it. But I think that was actually not warranted. I feel that has gone well.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think has been most fulfilling about the job here?
Oh,
It's a hefty one.
that is a heftier one. It's nice to have, well, first off, just like having an actual job that continues for any length of time is really nice. Because I'd done like gig work and I'd done part-time work, but like that was kind of nice. But I think the fulfilling aspect of it was, going in, I wanted to touch on multiple aspects of what it was like to be in a museum. And I think that this job has done that really effectively. Like, I've been able to do education. Yes, obviously that's in my title. The full title, Assistant Education Curator of Academic and Community Programs, is far too long. But I was also able to work in collections. I was able to contribute to some of how the exhibitions were being set up. Like, I was able to kind of dip into all these different parts of the work. So, yes, I have loved the education aspects, but it's really that breadth of stuff that I think is been most valuable, at least to me.
And then what do you think has been the most challenging?
Some of it was like had to do with my formal education. Does that make sense? My actual educational background in terms of about what pedagogy is and how to do that was not super extensive. I actually at first I felt self-conscious about that, and so I sometimes have difficulty, like, I'll have like a thought in my head, but I'm like, oh, am I going to express that correctly? And like being able to kind of push myself into.
I've actually felt the same as an intern.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I feel like that's a thing with like a lot of when you start out in a position, you feel scared to like speak up, but then as you work your way through, you get more confident.
Yeah, and my coworkers have been nothing but helpful in that regard. Like I just sort of initially coming in, I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm kind of the lowest on the totem pole, and I kind of cycle out, and like, should I really be expressing my opinion about whatever? And it kind of became clear that was welcome pretty early on. And so yeah, like did I feel like that was challenging at first? Yes, but I think I have overcome that. I think that the job was well suited to overcoming that. So
this is a good question, and actually one that I've been wondering about too.
Yes.
One of the benefits of the job is taking a Bates course for credit each semester.
True.
And how did that affect your transcript, one? And what was your approach in selecting courses, number two?
Yeah, this is a really big perk. And in terms of the transcript side of things, like I mentioned, my art history background was not super extensive. So I had taken, what was it? I guess 3 courses in art history. And so by pursuing those courses and being able to take them as part of my work, first off, getting paid to do homework and classwork is awesome. But it definitely beefed up that side of my transcript where I can point concretely to no, it's not just stuff that was connected to my major anymore. So like the courses that I took were in, while I was working here, have been on the art of Islam, decolonizing the museum, which we talked about on this podcast before, and I'm currently taking a class on Buddhist art and visual culture.
Wow.
And those things are really outside of, I sort of pursued them because they were very outside of my knowledge. I had touched on themes of them before. And so I think what that speaks to on the transcript is I now have like, okay, I've been educated in a lot of art related to how people experience art, I think is the best way of phrasing it. So that's that medieval Christian art. It's also Islamic art and Buddhist art. Those things are things that people connect to in a kind of, it's a sort of liminal kind of thing, which I think is very helpful. The decolonization class was basically professional development for like half of it. Like a lot of it was like stuff where we would talk about something and then I would go back to work and I would apply that immediately.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it is just incredibly helpful. For me, I was like, I guess technically I've added a GEC. I guess I could say I've added I can't remember which GEC. If you're close to, we don't have an art history minor, but if you're close to getting a degree, one of the big perks can be that you can finish a degree. So like if you had technically you could try and beef up something into being a minor. Which is great. That's awesome. I opted not to take education courses, but I am sure that that's an option. Those typically require class visit time. For me, I wanted to spend more time in the actual museum, but like if that's really your primary interest, I bet that that's something you could pursue.
Yeah.
And so I think that's immeasurably helpful.
Wow. Okay. So
yeah,
how has working this job here at the Bates Museum of Art changed your understanding of the museum field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I saw this on the list beforehand, and I it's sort of like, I'll use an analogy. So when I was a student, I took a class with John Cavallero called Intro to Screen Studies.
Heard his name.
Yes.
Never met him.
Great professor, actually. I liked his class a lot. Before I went into the class, I loved movies. I appreciated movies. I couldn't articulate well why I liked a movie that I liked and why I didn't like a movie I didn't like. And that class kind of taught me a lot of the terminology about how to express that. But it also, in a way, it both sort of like ruins and enhances different kinds of movies. So like there are some movies that I enjoyed as sort of like a guilty pleasure after taking that class. Some of those films, the technical aspects, something glares out about them and like you can't unsee it. And then you're just like, okay, this film is kind of ruined for me.
Yeah. On
the flip side, there were some things that are really great. They're now enhanced by taking this class. So, I just saw Ghost of the Flower Moon, the theater Scorsese movie.
Still need to see that.
So good.
Yeah.
Loved this movie. But part of my appreciation of it was that I could enjoy it technically as well as just being immersed in it.
Yeah.
And like it's kind of the same way to land this plane. It's kind of the same way with the museum. So I used to go to museums all the time and I would enjoy some exhibitions and I would maybe not enjoy others as much and I couldn't really articulate why. And now I'm looking at it in a much more technical way and maybe that takes some exhibitions and I see them in a new light and maybe I don't enjoy them as much. But the ones that are really great, the ones that are doing something fascinating and new, like I can appreciate them in like this kind of whole new way. I went back to the Currier Art Museum in New Hampshire is the one that was near where I grew up. So that's the art museum I've been to the most. I've been there a ton. Revisiting it after this job, totally different. It was like I saw everything in a very, very different way and actually appreciated it a lot more. So, is that the primary perk of working in a museum? No, like there's other things about it that are great, but it's nice. Like it really, it's a great way to enhance that kind of experience.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. And how do you feel about like the art in the Bates Museum? Do you feel when you first came here, it was hard to interpret and then now?
Oh, such a good question, actually.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely some art that, I do not have a formal education in art of basically the modern period, the modern era, or contemporary art. And so I would see a lot of it and I'd be like, this is this is all kind of Greek to me. Like
Mm.
some of it I can be like, oh, I kind of like this.
Yeah.
And to some extent that's still true. Like, there sometimes I see like a Mark Rothko painting and I'm like, I like this. But that's all I can say about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I had more contextual education, I could appreciate it. But there are things that I once I've kind of learned more about it, I'm starting to develop a little bit more of a context for what's in the collection. It totally seems different to me now. There are things that I didn't think much of or didn't really think about, and now I like really love and appreciate those. I think especially during when we had oh God, the full name is so long. And so did pleasure take the hand of sorrow, and they wandered through the land of joy, I think is the full title.
Okay.
That was the exhibition we had a little while ago. And it started fairly soon into the job, and I completely changed like which of the pieces were my favorites during it, because initially it was kind of mostly gut feeling, and then kind of going back to them over and over again and getting more and more context in my work. It completely changed. And
was this the exhibition before fall 2022? So spring 2022?
It would have been, no, when was this? I guess it was last winter.
Yeah.
It would have been. Yeah.
Okay, so my first time coming to Bates, the first place I went was the museum. And I think I saw that exhibition.
Okay.
And there was a woman working downstairs, and she talked about the exhibition. I don't remember who she was, and I haven't seen her since I've been at the museum. But I remember her talking about it. She was so passionate, like, about what was up around.
Yeah.
And, like, she was showing me and my mom everything. And I was like, wow, if I could come to this school and be just this passionate about anything.
Yeah.
Like, I would feel that I really found myself with the education.
See, that's a good point, too, because I feel like part of it is just people can be passionate about anything, and there's something that can be appreciated about almost everything. And if you can just talk to somebody who kind of has that, I think almost anybody can then appreciate something that they never thought about. Certainly that was the way with me in music. I used to have like much fewer kinds of music that I would listen to. I studied it, I heard more about it, and now it's like, okay, like I can, maybe I don't listen to Stravinsky, but I don't hear it and go, what's this crap?
Yeah.
Like I have, there's something, I can appreciate what there is to appreciate about it.
Totally. Okay, so what is one thing you have not yet had a chance to accomplish that you want to be able to move on to the done column before passing the baton on to the next employee?
This is a great question. I would love to implement a formal lesson plan. So I took a professional development class actually that was focused on writing formal lesson plans for a museum. And it's a little bit of a weird area to be because museums typically get classified, the term you hear a lot is informal education, because you're not in a classroom. So like there isn't a teacher who is usually implementing a strict plan to meet, what's the term that they use? Oh gosh, that's embarrassing. I can't remember this right now. The sort of criteria that every grade year is supposed to be able to pass. Standards. Learning standards.
Okay.
That's what I was looking for. But there is something that's really helpful to know about that, because the more you know about the standards in your local area, the more that you can bring people in, and they can justify it to their school as to why they're coming. You can justify it to them in terms of it's meeting those criteria. And so I've written up some lesson plans. One of them has to do with the series of Kirkland paintings that we have, Isabel Kirkland. Or I guess they're prints of paintings, but they're sort of collections of different species. One is all extinct species. One is species that almost went extinct and have come back, kind of things like that. They're really great tools for teaching about science, which is something that more museums I think can tap into, and at least art museums I'm thinking of. So I would love to be able to implement that, and I hope that happens. Post-pandemic, obviously, schools were not in, and so it's kind of that shifting back. I would love to kind of see that happening. It's already happened a little bit, but seeing it continue and be able to be a part of that would be great.
And do you plan on continuing museum work once you leave Bates?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah.
I've been trying to I've been thinking about this more recently, and I've been trying to kind of think about how to properly phrase it. And it is that kind of like working in that informal setting in a smaller group, being able to touch on all of these different subjects. Museums are great at that. There are other things that can do that too. So like, who knows? But I think that was something that by touching on all the different areas within the museum, I feel like I have a really good idea of this is the kind of job that I would like. And this is one that would bore me to death. And like things like that. So yeah, I'd like to see that happen. Obviously I'm 23 years old, so who knows? Yes. But that's what I would like to do.
Okay. So Peter, thank you.
Yes.
We have one more very important question.
So I see.
This is probably what the entire podcast is building up to.
Oh yeah, so, absolutely.
Your pick. Do you think the museum staff is Star Trek or Star Wars cast, and who are you?
This is such an Anthony question. Well, I'll start with, have you seen, I'm assuming you've seen at least some of Star Wars.
I have never seen Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
This is a crazy thing. So I've seen a part of the first movie, but I've never finished a Star Wars movie. And the part I've seen of the first movie was very recently. And I was like forced to watch it. Yes. It wasn't at college. It was over the summer.
Now, first movie, we're talking about episode 4? Or
yes, like the actual
the actual first movie.
Yes. And I thought it was good, but I just didn't finish watching it.
So here's the thing.
Yes.
I've seen, I think, every Star Wars movie that's been made.
Okay.
I didn't like, I think, 80% of them, and so it's not something I could really recommend to somebody. I sort of like the first 2, which would be episode 4 and 5, and after that, the list kind of goes off a cliff. Star Trek, I've seen The Next Generation.
I've seen the Star Treks with Captain Kirk.
Yes.
Which one is that?
Like the new movies or the show?
The show.
Okay, yeah. Old one. The original series.
Is that the really, really old one?
That's the really old one. That's like the classic. I've seen some of that too. I haven't seen all of that. In terms of like the analogizing here, I find Star Trek to be a harder analogy because my brain floats to more characters because, personal opinion, it's more interesting. But with Star Wars, I think I'll go with Chewbacca. Okay. I like Chewbacca. He's good. When he's off screen, you don't think about him that much, but he plays a very important role. It's kind of what I would say.
And who do you think Anthony is?
Oh, that's a good question. That's harder.
R2-D2.
My brain's like, Jabba the Hutt. That'll teach him for asking questions. Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that one more. Star Trek. If you've seen The Next Generation, I love Geordi. Geordi's like my favorite character, so I'd like to think I'm like Geordi. I'm probably more like those dumb characters who appear in one episode and they show up and they say something completely crazy, and the whole episode is just everyone fighting their dumb suggestion. Those are good episodes. So if I'm being honest, maybe more like that, but I think that's my best answer that I can give.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes.
It's been great.
Thank you very much. And thanks to Nick. Nick has been working on this. This might be the last time you hear Nick.
Aw.
That's possible.
That's sad.
I hope not.
Well, we only have what, 3?
There's only two more episodes are left before we hit the holiday break.
Yeah. Scary.
Which is pretty terrifying. I'll tease now because I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. When we get back from in January, back from the holidays, there's going to be a whole slew of episodes from students who have been working as part of Aaron Nolan's documentary photography class, who are going to be releasing. They'll be once a week, and they're going to be like research episodes on stuff in our collection. I think they're going to be really great. They're going to be very involved. They have more time to edit than I do.
Wow.
So they can they can add some fun stuff in there. So yeah, 2 more episodes to come, a little bit of a break, and then the tempo is picking up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Cool.